Thank you. That's fine. Thank you. Welcome back to the 11th of May. We have a special council meeting for today on the matter of a contract variation to the venue development works. So we'll start off with an acknowledgement of country. Councillor Kunzman, would you like to do the acknowledgement of country?
Ipswich City Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered, acknowledging our gratitude that we share this land today, but also acknowledging the cost of that sharing and our hope that we can move to a place of justice and partnership together, and that we welcome opportunities for further engagement.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzman. May I ask Councillor Ireland to give us our opening prayer, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace as we make decisions that affect the citizens of Ipswich City, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth and for the greater glory of our community and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I note attendance of everyone and no apologies, leaves of absence. I'm going to do a procedural motion to suspend standing orders for something very special for about 2 minutes, if I may. Some of you know what it's about. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. This is a very special gift to Councillor Sheila Ireland and her husband Chris. Tomorrow is their 50th wedding anniversary.
In accordance with the policy, it's only signed by your divisional councillors, but there is a separate card that we've each signed as well.
Thank you. Would you like to say anything, Councillor Isla, before I move us back into meeting procedures? You put the microphone.
Everybody in the staff area has also made me feel really special today. And I thank everybody for their good wishes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for your indulgence. I'll now move that we resume meeting procedures. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. Now move on to declarations of interest on the matters on the agenda. Does anyone have
Thanks,
any?
Mayor. In accordance with Section 150 EQ of the Local Government Act, I, Councillor Andrew Fechner, informed the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 6.1, titled Variation to Contract 19564 Venue Development Works, Design and Construction. The nature of my interest are my business interests in both A1A Proprietary Limited and Bar Heisenberg Proprietary Limited, both located in the top of town in Ipswich. Plan on dealing with this by leaving the room while the matter is discussed and voted on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In accordance with Section 150 EQ of the Local Government Act 2009, I, Councillor Jacob Madsen, informed the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 6.1, titled Variation to Contract Venue Development Works, Design and Construct. The nature of the declarable conflict of interest is I'm on the executive of the Ipswich Trades Hall and Labour Day Committee, and our building, the Ipswich Trades Hall, is adjacent to Council's CBD redevelopment works. As a result, I should say, of my conflict of interest, I will leave the meeting room while the matter is considered and voted on.
Thank you, Councillor Madsen. Well, we'll move on to officers' reports. So are there any other declarations of interest? No, in that case we'll move on to item 6.1. Thank you. Thank you. You put them wherever you would like, Councillor Ireland. Thank you very much. We're now moving on to the purpose of today's meeting, which is item 6.1, which is the variation to contract 19564, venue development, works design and construct. We've just come out of the committee meeting just before this, and obviously we have recommendations A through to E. I understand the chair of that subcommittee. Did you wish to add an additional recommendation to that, or not at this stage?
Thank you, Mayor. I did have an additional recommendation, but I understand Councillor Jonick has a similar.
Okay.
I'm more law. She's more finance.
Okay, so
We will.
may I suggest we'll do I guess a move in a second and probably go into closed session to have a discussion, if that's okay. So I guess as the chair, would you like to move the A through to E to start off with? And I'll second that. Thank you. I'll now move that we move into closed session to just, I move in accordance with section 254J3, G, to go into closed session for negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government, for which a public discussion would likely to prejudice the interests of the local government. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Any discussion? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. So I can see everyone in the room except for Councillor Tully has raised his hand. And those against going into closed session? Those abstaining? And Councillor Tully has abstained. So we'll now go into closed session. Harrison, let me know when we're in closed session. Thank you very much. Thank you. We've just come out of the closed session, and so we're back into open session. And so we'll go through having, I think, probably a few questions. May I ask Mr. Hepburn to come to the lectern, please? Thank you. Would you say your name and your job title, please?
I'm James Hepburn, and I'm the Nicholas Street Precinct Director.
Thank you very much. Appreciate this might be the third time you're answering this question because we had the subcommittee in the closed session, but I think there's some information that I think is really important for the residents to understand. I'd like to talk a bit about the mould, and in particular where it is and why these works need to occur.
Yes, as set out in some of the reports, mould has been found within the venue building, particularly within the cinema boxes. As demolition has commenced and really undertaken early parts of this year, the mould has been discovered to be far worse than the builder Hutchinson originally thought. Originally, it was considered to be partly superficial and just on some of the walls and within that part of the building, but it turns out that as demolition has gone through, mould can now be found within the cavities of the blockwork. It's found within the ventilation of the air ducting, and it's also been found within framing and underneath the tiered seating concrete structures of the cinema boxes.
Does that mean that during, I guess, the costing and the quoting and scoping the work, when they saw mould on the walls, they thought it was just on the walls and didn't realise it had gone through and was in between the walls? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yes, the original reports came back and identified mould as being prevalent in the building, but they identified it as being superficial to the surface, and they identified it as being airborne particles. Under further investigation post the demolition period, it was obviously found to have actually gone way further than that and actually got into the concrete and into the blockwork of the building.
The mould's actually in the concrete?
I don't know if it's actually into the concrete, but it's certainly around on it, and it's into the blockwork and the partition walls.
Okay. When you look at the costs, it's quite a lot, millions of dollars there. Why is it such a lengthy process and costly
There's a big
process?
change in the price because originally it was essentially looking at a clean, a real deep clean of the space and then treating those areas. That has jumped as once mould has actually found its way into the structure and behind those partitions, it becomes a demolition and then a rebuild of those 6 cinema boxes. So they are large boxes, they are very high and there's quite a technical build and a lengthy build that comes with that. So there's been an extension of time that relates to that. The demolition as well is not something that just happens overnight with a wrecking crew. A lot of it happens by hand, and it's considered a biohazard. And as we've set out before, the specialist team that come in and remove the mould will treat it in not a dissimilar way to asbestos. There'll be 3 hazmat changes a day, and they'll be working shifts over that period of time to remove it, put it in bags, and then for the Hutchinson team to take it away and dispose of it appropriately.
Okay. I asked in closed session, so I'll put this as a question on notice, but obviously in total with those 2 figures, looking at that 20.3 million, I'm keen to know, I think we'd need to know how much of that money is for the cinema and remediating that, and how much is it for the scope, for the changes made to the rest of the precinct there, the venue area there. So obviously there's a scope change for that rest of the venue area. So
there's 44 variations that we need to quickly work through and bring that information back to you.
Yes.
But I will say the majority of it, I think, sits within the entire building. Yeah, yes, the mould is prevalent for the cinema, but the roof of the venue building is the roof of all the other 9 tenancies that will be taking place in there. And again, the same with some of the other variations.
Like you said, with the drainage and the...
Yeah, the sewers, the drainage, mechanical and electrical. The building is one living piece.
Okay. I'll open up for other questions of Mr Hepburn, if there's not. Thank you.
I'll just re-ask my question.
Please do.
Because we've only had Hutchinson's builder check for mould, one of the recommendations is for consideration to engaging an occupational hygienist or an indoor environmental professional to check on mould after everything's removed. Is that something you will consider?
It's something we can consider. Hutchinson will have to provide us with a number of reports and sign-offs that it is clear of mould. They will also have to do that to hand over the space to the Hoyts team. Hoyts will not take this space unless they think it hasn't been dealt with and treated properly. So adding a third check to that can certainly be done, but I think in this instance the liability would then sit with Hutchinson and probably would not be required. We can take that on. The only thing I will say is to find the expert and procure that might add a few days to the extension of time.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of Mr Hepburn? Yes, Councillor Tully. Thank you.
Thanks. I think you touched on, but I just wanted to clarify, when was the serious extent of the amount of mould discovered?
So the Hutchinson's provisional sum changed in December last year. Essentially doubled from just over $100,000 to $200,000. Their demolition really started getting going over that period, stopped over Christmas and then started again in January. And it's through that period that they then realised that mould had actually got behind the walls. That was the moment they started tearing down the partitions and started to uncover some of these problems.
So there was sort of 2 stages to it?
There's 3 stages to it. I think we originally looked at mould back in March, April of last year. Right. And it was priced accordingly. It then came back that clearly things had changed, perhaps due to the climate conditions over that period of time around about December. And then once certain parts of the building were uncovered through demolition, that changed again in the new year. And then it was a process of about 2 months for Hutchies to consider the building methodology to actually remove the mould, and then to measure and look at what it would cost to rebuild those boxes. So it took them a couple of months actually to formulate the price that we have within this report today.
And without going into specifics of any particular organisation, have we relied on professional advice or opinions or information from or reports from third parties to prior to this to understand what our position was? And if we have we explored, and all I need is a general sort of answer, what our legal rights might be?
I think it's 2 parts to that. Hutchies have used 2 different lead consultants, and those consultants send their sampling off to independent labs, which I think is an important thing to note. On the client side, yes, we have a quantity surveyor, Ryder Levitt Bucknell, and for this part it was Ranbury Project Management Services, who provided us with the advice around the Hutchinson's provisional sums. And at that time, the advice was that the provisional sum was adequate for the mould that had been found at that time.
I wasn't exploring individual sort of names, but have we, up to now, explored our legal rights in respect of reports or information that we've sought or received?
We have considered what that might look like through professional indemnity. I think it may well be difficult to go down that route, but it's one that we can look at a bit further with the in-house legal team.
Yeah, no, I was looking at whether we've explored our legal rights externally based on information or reports, or what we've relied on to, in the course of the contract, what we've relied on. I take it was based on information and reports from third parties. Have we looked at what our broad legal rights might be?
Yes, we have, and I think it's pretty clear the construction contract was put together by Clayton Oots, who are a respected law firm, and it's pretty clear what it says in that contract in relation to provisional sums and the changes in those variations. So there may be some recourse to look at across differing levels, but it's hard to probably say.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. I'm not
Mr.
feeling
Dunleavy.
very comfortable. I think we need to go into closed session.
I'll just check. So, Councillor Lee, would you like to ask some more questions in this
Yes,
line?
Yeah,
Because
I didn't intend to, transgress, that position.
no,
But I might ask a couple of other questions, and then if we have to resolve, there might be other questions that people might want to go into a closed session
Okay.
with. In the figures that we've been given, and the additional amounts sought for the contract today, I think it's 14.9 million, and the one for 5.3 million says it excludes GST. Do we have to pay that and claim it back, or is that on top of those two amounts of approximately 20.3 million?
I'd have to actually defer that question to Jeff, the Chief Financial Officer, if that's okay.
Because that'd be another couple of million.
before I call up Mr Keach, do you have any other questions of Mr Hepburn?
Just let me check if it's...
I note that one.
Yeah, I ask my questions in generalities rather
Yeah.
than the specifics, but probably to get a complete answer, we do need that. But perhaps, Mayor, if any other councillors have questions that might touch on some of the legal issues,
Okay.
that they can be handled in the closed session too.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr Hepburn? Yes, Councillor Johnny?
I'm just clarifying, in my opinion, your commentary in relation to the mould only being really reported on accurately in November, December last year is quite deceptive, in my opinion, because the extent of the mould was reported by an expert in May of 2022. So in an open and honest dialogue, I believe that commentary in this open session is deceptive.
Sorry, I'll just correct the mould was updated in December last year. You're right, it was very, very clear. It was reported on in those timeframes and identified quite early on in the year last year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr Hepburn? Thank you, Mr Hepburn. Will I call up, would you like Mr Dunleavy first or Mr Keach?
Perhaps Mr Keach can
Mr.
comment
Keach,
on the
the CFO?
GST issue,
Yep.
please.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councillors. Jeff Keach, Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, the figures quoted said ex-GST.
Yes.
Is that payable and then claimable?
Correct, yes. My understanding of the GST will be on top of that, and then, yes, as an input tax credit, we would then claim the GST back. So the net cost to council will be the amount that sits within the amount of the report there. But yes, from a cash flow perspective, we will pay the gross, and then we'll claim back in our normal BAS returns the input tax credit for what we've
How long
paid.
does that take to that 2 million to come back?
We generally lodge on a monthly basis for our BAS, so it's not like a small business. So, yeah, just depends on the timing of when we pay it in 1 month and then when we claim that back in probably the month after.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And that, I'll just say that applies to all our normal purchases of contracts.
Okay. Are there any other questions of Mr Keach while he's here, the CFO? No, thank you. Can I tell you, are you wanting to have questions with Mr Dunleavy on legal matters?
Yeah, but probably in the closed session again.
Yes, I was going to say,
Similar.
if you want you to do that, then I'll ask for us to go into
Similar
closed
vein.
session. Would you like to do that now?
Unless there's other general questions that people want to ask before we do that.
Are there any other questions you'd like to ask council officers?
No, I'm happy to go
Okay.
into closed. Thanks, Chair.
In that case, I move that we move into closed session in accordance with section 254J3, G, for negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving local government for which a public discussion would likely to prejudice the interests of the local government, and also E, on legal advice obtained by local government or legal proceedings involving the local government, for example, legal proceedings that may be taken by or against the local government. Those two should cover it. So I move that. Do I have a seconder? I guess Councillor Tully. Thank you, Councillor Tully, for seconding that. I'll then put that to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, and let me know when we're in closed session. and others. And so thank you very much everyone else who had those discussions and questions. So we're back into open discussion. Is there anything else anyone else would like to discuss on the matter? Yes, Councillor Tully.
I just have a couple of amendments, but we might just take one simple one, I think, at the start. It's an amendment to paragraph E of the recommendation, and this is based on past wording of pre-budget decisions. And I might just give a preamble that the wording always in the past has been included in the draft 2023-24 budget. The reason being that I don't believe we can make a formal budget decision today, and if we could, if it is a budget decision, we'd have to invite councillors Madsen and Fechner back.
Correct.
So could I, perhaps with the movers and seconders agreement, put that?
So we put that
in the
here.
draft
Councillor
budget
Doyle,
report.
as the mover, you're okay with that? I would agree. The seconder.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor, did you have another recommendation?
Yeah, I might just see if there's any other
Sorry,
discussion.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I did email that through.
Yes. So I'll put that up there, then I'll come back to yourself, Councillor Tully. There was I'll call it F. I'll just read it out. That council conduct a review of the, or do you wish to read it out, Councillor Doyle?
I'm happy
Yours?
for you too, Mayor.
That council conduct a review of the contract management process in relation to the contract over the last 12 months and provide a report to council identifying financial, operational and legal risks that may have arisen and how they were addressed or could still be addressed associated with the development which is the subject of the contract. So obviously as the, I'm assuming because you're proposing that, Councillor Doyle, you're okay with that, and as the seconder, I'm okay with F. Councillor Tully, did you have another recommendation as well?
Yeah, it's in relation to item B, or paragraph B, and it's the power of delegation. This is such an important issue that I'd propose the following wording at the end of paragraph B, but as part of paragraph B, to add the words, under section 259 of the Local Government Act 2009, comma, the council directs the chief executive officer not to further delegate this power. If I have a seconder, I'll explain briefly the intention of that.
Yep.
Yeah. Under the legislation, the
I was going to say I'm happy as the move to hear you, Councillor Tully, on to speak. As to what?
Under the legislation, the CEO, the council can delegate to the CEO, who can clearly on-delegate. But I think there are some issues, and probably of this magnitude and in this situation, it's not just a matter of a simple delegation that might go down the line. So section 259 gives that specific power that it must be basically exercised personally by the chief executive officer. It doesn't restrict the power, doesn't prevent the power, doesn't require any other consultation, but it makes it clear that given the nature and sensitivities of this particular matter, that we would expect the CEO to be to exercise that delegation personally.
Thank you. I'll just ask the CEO, any issues or concerns? No issues? Sorry.
Apologies, Chair. No concerns. Agree. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll just...
well, I was going to second, as the mover and seconder, you're okay with it? So we probably won't need to.
No, but I just want to correct that. I see that as a separate sentence, but still part of the same paragraph. So it'd be decision full stop.
Okay, decision full stop and then capital U.
And then capital U for under section 2 of the Local Government Act. Council directs the CEO not to further delegate this.
So you'll have moved by council. You probably don't need a second by council because the mover and the seconder are accepting it. So council won't need a second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything? Okay, I just make sure that's all up on the screen so people can see that. Take your time, it's okay. Okay. Okay, so we see that there's A, the amendment to B, C stayed the same, D has stayed the same, E has got the word draft, and then there's F. Okay. Okay, so we've got A through to F. Any other discussion on the matter? In that case, I put the matter A through to F to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Oh, I asked for anyone want any further discussion? The mover and the...
Sorry, Mayor, can I just confirm that are we voting on the altering the full recommendation with just this? Right, thank you.
Okay, so what I'll say is we're not voting on that. What I'll say is that Councillor Tully has put forward this amendment. Both the mover, Councillor Doyle, and the seconder, myself, are happy with that. So there's no need to move that to a vote. Are we happy for that? So...
Okay, so we are voting on the entire recommendation here.
Yes, so I can pause it and we'll go back to discussion if we should discuss the entire matter. So recommendations A through to F in its entirety, as they are the changed recommendations. Apologies for not being clearer. As the mover, Councillor Doyle, do you wish to do a reply or sorry, Councillor Tully, you wish to say something?
No, I'm right, thank you.
Okay. You have the right of reply before we go to a vote, Councillor Doyle?
Thank you, Mayor. Just generally in relation to this matter before us this afternoon,
Yes.
just wanted to highlight the 23-24 federal budget. Obviously, the headline, there was some cost of living relief, but no new infrastructure. As chair of this committee, I've said before, I don't take what we're doing here lightly. It is a huge undertaking with significant risk. Property development is not something that local governments generally do. However, this was presented to us to take forward, and I note that the current state government appointed administrator pulled the trigger on the development. Since that time, it's closely monitored, obviously, by the state, the Deputy Premier's Office, the Minister for Local Government, as well as the DG for that department has been out here. The significant amount of financial and governance information reported on to the state should not ever be understated. And so far, the feedback has been very positive, and there are many that are quite delighted with the progress that we've made here. So in that context, though, I do note the budget has announced some monies for urban renewal. We here in little old Ipswich have never received any monies towards our $250 million investment by ratepayers. There's been no grant monies from the state or federal government to this point. So I see this as a great opportunity that, you know, they've effectively endorsed this project, and we're getting runs on the board. We're hitting some good milestones. Yes, we've had challenges like today, but the significant benefits for the wider Ipswich community have been stated by Bull and Bear. So, yeah, I look forward to working with council officers to see if we are eligible for some of those grant monies.
Thank you very much. We've had your reply. Now goes to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. So it's myself, Councillor Kunzelman, the Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Doyle. Those against? Thank you, Councillor Johnnick. Those abstaining? Councillor Ireland, Councillor Tully. Thank you. So the motion has passed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your diligence. I know that all of you have put a lot of time and effort into that, and really appreciate the gravity of this. Thank you. I'll now close the meeting at 3:07.